gosh.
No.
Well, she was in class of 64, and she just passed away, I guess, last week, so.
You're getting used to that, huh?
Oh, yeah, that's the page, isn't it?
Yeah, more than half of ours have passed away.
Yeah.
My best friend passed away in May. That was hard.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember.
Yeah, there still are some of them I keep in contact with on Facebook.
Okay.
Not many old people on Facebook. You're not on Facebook, are you?
I am. I try not to be. I don't post anything ever. I just down to a few pieces.
Yeah, I think 80% of my Facebook friends are former students.
I can imagine. But I get a lot of former students of mine who ask, and I never. I just I don't know. I don't take friends from my former students. One or two, but that's all.
Don't you?
No.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah, I know
just
you
love
do.
it.
Yeah, I know.
They were so supportive during my illness. I had probably 200
Wow.
people that were praying for me, and one girl said, "I do not pray, but I wish you well."
Yeah.
I said, "Oh, okay."
Well, that's a different thing. So, yeah. And I would assume that a lot of
I'll put this in. I don't know whether it'll do any good.
Yeah.
I don't like to wear hearing aids,
Well,
but I can't hear worth a darn, so all I have to do is hear you.
that's right, and yourself. And if somebody in the control room screams at us, "Stop using profanity," then we have to hear that. What is your name?
Maverick Rowe.
Maverick?
Yep.
Okay. And your last name again?
Rowe.
Rowe. Are you have parents who went to Southside?
Nope.
Nope.
And I went to Homestead.
Oh, okay. All righty.
I can't hear him.
Yeah. Well, we're glad you're here, and I hope you're enjoying Southside. What grade are you?
Freshman.
Freshman. Well, you're on the ground floor of all this TV material, aren't you?
Yeah.
Although I shouldn't say that, because of course every high school used to have a TV studio, and then they closed them all, and now they're bringing them back.
I've got a grandson that's a freshman at Snyder.
But not the one that you drove back and forth to
He's a freshman at Concordia
college
University in Chicago.
in Chicago.
Yeah, he just came home last week and surprised me.
Well, as I said, I'm just going to, say that you graduated in 1952.
Is this close enough?
I don't know. No one has responded, so I don't know. They're working on
Should
it.
be fine. So it should be. Yeah, I think it's good.
I told you you're a guinea pig. You're the first one.
So should they take the cap off the lens?
Oh. Don't let him pull your leg.
Can you hear us?
Yep.
I can't hear you. This darn thing.
Yeah. They advertise them as being magical, but I don't think they are.
Well, they want. I had a hearing test, and they wanted $4,000 for a pair of hearing aids. I said during the summer, I worked. We painted houses with
Right.
Jim Chandler,
Right.
and Gary Crawford, and I made all summer long, 8 weeks, I made $4,000. And I said, I'm working all summer for hearing aids? I said, no.
Yeah. Well, you've got some health insurance that'll pay for part of it, so.
I don't know whether they would or not. I didn't even try. I tried 4 different styles of hearing aids, and I didn't like any of them. I
Right.
don't like this one.
Yeah. My husband needs hearing aids, and he doesn't like them either, so. We
Okay, I'm
don't.
going to try to do it without it.
It's up to you.
Yeah, I can hear you, kind
Okay.
of.
Well, you'll get the gist of any question because, of course, it'll have to do with, your career as a student. You remember any particular teachers as a student here?
Yeah.
Okay.
The three that stick out to me are my dad.
What did he teach you?
He taught Algebra 3.
Oh, okay.
Well, he taught all different kinds of math, but I had him for Algebra 3. I think they call it pre-calculus now.
I have no idea.
And then my chemistry teacher, Mr. Gilbert,
Oh, okay.
he retired your freshman year, I think. He was 4, 3, 2, 1. No, he retired when you were in the 8th grade. Then Mr. Weber was my homeroom teacher. Those three are the ones that really stick out.
Okay.
I liked all my teachers. We had a really, really good staff. Most of them were here when you were here. Did you have Sterner?
I did, yes.
Didn't you like him?
I loved him, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, he was.
Did you ever hear this story about Sterner? About 1960, there was a pep session. It might have been when you were here, I don't know. But anyway, they had a cheer 2, 4, 6, 8. Who do you appreciate? Southside, South. So he, right in the middle of the cheer, he stood up. He was in the stands. He was in section K because we sat by homerooms, and that was close to his classroom. So he said, "Stop, stop, stop, stop." And he came down on the floor. He said, "I've been sitting here for years listening to that cheer, and we're going to do it right." He said, "It's 2, 4, 6, 8. Whom do you appreciate?" And so he led the cheer.
Okay. Yep. The thing I remember, somebody asked him a question, and I don't think he knew the answer, I think is what it was. Or he asked a question and everybody knew the answer, one way or the other. He was astounded. And he jumped from the floor to the seat of his chair to the top of his desk
Oh my
and
God.
yelled out, "Hell's bells! I can't teach you kids anything!" He was such a little wiry guy. Oh my gosh. Yep, he was.
Well, he had 2 kids. Dan Sterner was a year ahead of me. And Martha Stewart, no, it wasn't Martha, it was Jackie Stewart. She was maybe 4 or 5 years ahead of me. But another thing he did, well, one time he told us, tomorrow, don't bring your Latin book to class. Bring your English sentence book to class. He said, we've got to learn some English.
Right.
Mainly direct compliments.
Yep. That would be him.
And the other thing he did, well, this goes back a long time.
Keep going.
You see?
Think we're on? Oh, great. Well, this is the Southside Video Alumni Video Project, and our very first person that we're interviewing and talking with is George Robert Davis, and we call him Mr. Southside. Mr. Davis graduated from Southside in 1952, and even before that, he knew where the skeletons were buried because his father taught here from 1923 to 1964 as teacher of math, history, Latin. He was also athletic director and a guidance counselor, again retiring in 1964. So, Mr. Davis, you are Mr. Southside. While you were here, you studied very hard. You took many years of English, science, history, and math. You were in science club, workshops, service club, and the manager of sports. So, what are some outstanding events of your high school career that you would mention?
Well, my dad being athletic director, when I was a freshman, he gave me the job of keeping points for all the sports. And the point manager was a senior, and so I was his understudy. But we went to all the football games and all the basketball games, home and away, and the track meets. And my dad devised a point system for getting letters. He didn't have the coaches give the letters. He used a point system depending on how much they played. If you played a varsity football game, you got 32 points. Reserves got 16, freshmen got 8. And we kept track of them by quarters. And basketball, since they had twice as many games, the varsity got 16, the reserves got 8, and the freshmen got 4. If I did that right.
Whatever.
And the track meets, they got points, but depending on how they placed.
Well, that was quite a project then, and
So I got to go to all the games, and even we went to Gary, we went to Indianapolis, we went all different places. And so I kind of liked that, which prevented me from doing sports. Usually after school, almost everybody that I knew did not work, because we had athletics, we had clubs that met after school. But I think today, it seems like almost everybody has a job after school. I know my granddaughter's a senior, and she has a job.
well, even maybe that was part of the reason why you were National Honor Society and you were on the honor roll every year. And just briefly, though, you went to James Smart Middle School. Was it called?
Well, they call it a junior high.
Junior high.
I went there for 7th and 8th grade.
Okay, and then came
Before I came to Southside.
All right.
And
you have a lot of people that you know from way back then, because you've gone to Fort Wayne Community Schools. And
well, I started school at Harrison Hill. Harrison Hill was built a couple years after Southside was built. In fact, when Southside was built in 1922, the school year 22-23, we had a Southside elementary school.
Absolutely, right.
And one of the first or second graders was Bob Severs. When Harrison Hill opened, Bob Severs would have been the first one to enter the school, but when he got there, he held the door open for a little girl so he could get in. Then he was the second one in Harrison Hill. Well, while I was at Harrison Hill in the 2nd grade, Miss Weissel was our teacher, and she put on a performance of Hansel and Gretel. And Jim LaBrache was Hansel, and Nan Edmonds was Gretel. I was a gingerbread boy, along with Bill Osha, Jane Hattendorf, Janet Helms, Joyce Miller.
And these were all people then who came through Southside also?
Yeah, they all came to Southside and were very good friends all through, well, even today. I'm in contact with Dick Johnson and Janet Helms and Joyce Miller, and of course they have married names now. But then I went to Hoagland for the 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, and I met some people there like Al McClure and Jim Gully and Jack Allman, and they have become friends all through my life. Then I went to Smart School in 7th and 8th grade, and Jerry Pontius and Jim Davis and Phil O'Shaughnessy. His 2 sons are doctors here in Fort Wayne. Mark's my cardiologist, and Andy is my wife's nephrologist. So I've kind of kept up with my high school friends.
Good.
Much more than my college friends.
Okay, and where did you go to college after Southside?
I went to Hanover College, which is near Madison, Indiana.
Right.
And right outside of Hanover is Fremont Falls, which is the tallest falls in the state of Indiana. And while I was at Hanover, I never knew that. But I had a college friend named Milt Boss, and one of the interesting things about him, when we were freshmen, we were in every class together, but he was from Batesville, and I didn't really know him. But as we became, and we pledged different fraternities. And as sophomores, I got to know him a little better, and juniors a little better. We were in every class together at Hanover except for all 4 years. So he became my best friend. And during my senior year, Merle J. Abbott and Bob Cowan came down to Hanover to interview for a math job at Southside High School. So the two of us sat there and talked to the superintendent and the personnel director. And we told him that we were together in all those classes. We did about the same. He said at the end of the interview, "Does either one of you play football?" Well, he was our center on our football team. And so they hired him so he could come to Southside and help coach football, which I couldn't do.
Right.
So I went to graduate school the next year, and then I came to see Aaron T. Lindley at spring break, because he said he'd have a job for me. And he said, "I've got a job for you. You're teaching math at Northside." I said, "Northside?" Well, I took that job, but he told me, "You can't tell anybody, but the chemistry teacher at Southside is going to retire in 1960, and you're going to take over his job, but don't tell anybody." I said, "Okay." So I went to Northside, and I found out those students out there were very nice people. And the teachers were very nice. And so that was a big awakening for me. And I got into a bowling league for faculty, so I got to know teachers all over town, and I was really glad I did.
Did you, but you did come to Southside, but in what year as teacher?
Well, in 1957, 58, they had a biology teacher teaching the extra chemistry class. Mr. Gilbert taught 4, and a biology teacher taught the 5th one, but he didn't know enough about chemistry. So I came all the way across town from Northside, the 7th period of the day, and taught a chemistry class at Southside.
Oh my.
And then the next year, I came to Southside. I taught 4 math classes and 1 chemistry class. The next year was 1960, and I taught chemistry until 1996.
You taught here for 39 years. And what are some of the outstanding events that you remember from teaching here at Southside for 39 years?
Well, this is kind of corny, I guess, but every year that I taught chemistry, I taught about 6 weeks of organic chemistry. And we got into the hydrocarbons, methane, ethane, propane, butane, pentane, and so on. And then the alcohols were methyl, ethyl, propyl, butyl, pentyl, and so on.
Just showing off here, Archie.
And the ketones were well, there was no methanone or ethanone, but there was propanone, which we call acetone or fingernail polish remover. And the acids were formic, acetic, propionic, butyric, valeric, but they had a systematic name where the alcohols ended in OL, methanol, ethanol, propanol, butanol. The aldehydes, methanal, ethanal, butyl, propanol, and butanol. And the acids were methanoic, ethanoic, propanoic, butanoic, pentanoic. And they ended in OIC. So I kind of put that together, and I said, my goal is to get the kids to say, "Oh, I see." Only it's, "Oh, I see." And that was my goal as a teacher. Most of my questions were why, and then I would try to explain. I had a girl in 1964 named Nancy Keller, and she has always been, since I got on the alumni board, we renewed our friendship, and now this is Nancy.
Yes. I was a 1964 graduate of Southside, and my children graduated from Southside.
Yeah, I had Lee Mack.
Right. And,
Yes.
and he went on to major in organic chemistry at IU.
And he lives in China.
Yes, he does. So you were a club sponsor also here at South?
Oh, I did all kinds of things. Through the 60s, I sponsored the classes. Senior class sponsor, usually with Mr. Sage. And during the 70s, we had a new track coach from Goshen named Bill Walker. and Bill wanted some help at his track meets. So his idea was to get a group of girls together, and they would have their stopwatches, and they would time, especially the half mile and mile, because he wanted lap times, and we didn't have stopwatches that would do that at that time. And since we had a cinder track, he called them the Cinderellas.
Oh.
So I was sponsor of the Cinderellas all through the 70s. Then in the 80s and 90s, I was the science department head. So I always had some kind of a project.
Sure.
One of my projects, I don't know how long this will take, but the church I went to had a map of Fort Wayne, and they had pins in the map for where everybody lived. So what I decided to do, I was sitting at lunchtime with several other teachers. One of them was Bob Gurnan, and he had been in the Second World War and the Korean War. In the Second World War, he was over in Europe, and he'd been to lots of countries. In the Korean War, of course, he was over near Japan and Korea and Okinawa and Midway and Wake Islands. So I said, hey, I could get a map of the whole world and put pins where the teachers had been. So I sent out a questionnaires to the whole staff, and they, with all the countries and all the states, and had them circle the ones they had been in. Then Mr. Weicker, our principal, he was also my Sunday school teacher, allowed me to put a big map in the office, and then I put pins where all these people had been. And then I put pamphlets down, so if someone could look up, if someone wanted to go to Russia, they could look up Russia. We had 2 teachers that had been to Russia, so they could ask them what they had done over there, so they'd have some kind of an idea what to do. We had 6 of them at Italy.
Well,
But that was a big project that I did.
it was a beautiful map also. I remember it very clearly from recent years. They had a beautiful map in the main office. I don't think it's there anymore, but
No, I think during renovation they took that down.
Right, yeah, we lost a
And there's
lost.
probably nobody interested in doing that anymore.
Well, you know, it's an interesting question. And you also mentioned that you did a lot of videoing.
Oh, yeah. Well, one Christmas, my wife bought me a video camera, and they found out about it here at Southside. So the lady that was in charge of the musicals had me video all the musicals. We found out later on there was a copyright law that I had violated. But I videoed when Jenny Manth was principal. She started in 1990. She had me video all the commencement, because I could be way up high, and I was able to put a microphone down there. When they called the names, and I had a video of them, they made sure that the names went with the person. And then I videoed some of the track meets and some of the parties that they had.
Well, we have, in the alumni office, we have boxes and boxes of videotapes that we hope.
Those were mine.
They are indeed, and we'd like to get those on a disc sometime. It's
Well, I also did Ivy Days.
Oh, that's right. Yes. Ivy Days.
So I videoed the parade and then also the ceremony.
Okay. Well, you've had quite a career here at Southside, and you were here during some of the renovations.
I bleed green.
Yes, you do. Absolutely, absolutely. So, and having been a student here and having taught here for so many years, that's why we call you Mr. Southside. And of course,
Well, my dad taught here for 40, was here for 40 years. And so when I was a little kid, being athletic director, we came to all the games at home. We didn't go to the away games and all the football games. And the best part of the football game was the taffy apple.
the taffy apple.
Yeah, my mom would always buy us a taffy apple, and we thought that's part of a football game. And then
But you had siblings who also went to
my
Southside.
brother was a year ahead of me.
So he graduated in 1951.
51, yeah, he was salutatorian. Then my sister graduated in 61, and I had her as a chemistry student.
Oh.
She
Oh.
worked so hard, she did so well. Her name's Becky. My favorite teacher was my dad. He taught, we called it Algebra 3. I think they call it pre-calculus now. And
Why was
Mr. Gilbert, my chemistry teacher, he was the greatest influence on me to teach chemistry. So when I came back to Southside, I said, I'm going to do what he did, almost exactly. I even tried to use some of his jokes. And then my homeroom teacher was Bob Weber. We had homeroom every day. I think when you were here, you did too.
I think so, yes.
For about 10 minutes every morning.
Yes.
And so he, freshman through senior year, he was my homeroom teacher. Then as a teacher, Bob was a very good friend. We had a bridge club formed here at Southside with 12 teachers, and Bob Weber was one of them, and we had the bridge club meet once a month for 40 years.
40 years, my goodness.
So,
Well, that staff affairs, what did teachers do behind the scenes when you were teaching?
well, that's a little difficult to say. When Southside first started, 16 teachers came from Fort Wayne High School when it split to form Central and Southside. And the women, every one of them was a miss, and almost every man was a married man. So they kind of stayed apart. They had a women's lounge and a men's lounge.
Right.
So at Christmas time, the women put on a tea for the men in the Greeley room. And they had tea and coffee and cookies, and they sang Christmas carols. Well, the men, during there was one day off between semesters at that time. I don't know whether they do that now or not.
They tried.
But the men had their party in the boiler room, which was dusty and dirty, and they had prunes and spare ribs and things like that to eat to counteract what the women did. But they did that for many, many years, I think, until Mr. Weicker stopped it.
Well, I guess we,
Oh, I was going to tell you, Mr. Sterner used to write a story about something, and he had the teachers as names, like Ernie Walker. You could use that in a sentence very easily. And Bob White, you could use White very easily. But Pearl Rehorst was a home ec teacher. She started the second year the school was built when my dad started. And every year that Earl Sterner wrote this narrative, he would say that someone was riding on a horse and fell off, and then he left a blank, and you were supposed to put Rehorst in there.
well, I would love to have copies of those stories, and
Yeah, I would too.
yeah, such great
Well, the other thing
tradition.
that I did, about 2 or 3 years before I retired, Jack Weicker thought it would be a good idea to have the people who came back to Fort Wayne for a reunion to tour the school. So I volunteered to do that, and I did about one a summer. Then when Jenny Math became principal, she asked me if I would continue to do the tours, and I said, yeah, I will. She said, all of them? I said, well, okay. So I had about 6 or 7 tours every summer until this year, because I always had, ever since I was a teacher, I always had a master key to all the rooms. But the principal here at Southside won't give me a master key.
Nobody has a master key anymore.
I know, well, I've had one for 60 years.
No.
Well, I don't know whether they don't trust me or what the problem
They
is,
don't-
but I couldn't lead any tours this summer,
Right, right.
and probably never again.
Yeah. Well, they don't have that many, but yeah, I think it's difficult. The schools are now what they call hardened, which means,
I
that
know,
it's
I
very
know.
difficult to get in and out.
Well,
So,
what I liked about the tours, almost every time they would invite me to the reunion dinner, and I got to reconnect with students.
so many, right, exactly.
And I really loved that.
Yep.
Some of my students have been lifelong friends.
Good. It's interesting that you probably did some walking back and forth to school and home again.
Through snow that high?
There's snow that high, uphill both ways. But
No, yeah, when I was, of course, when my dad started here, almost nobody had cars. So all the staff lived right around South Side. And the ones that did live far away took the streetcar to get here. When I was in school, no students had cars. We couldn't have cars. And so the faculty would park around the school. We didn't have a parking lot.
right.
As a teacher, I would get here around 7 o'clock, so I'd have a parking space close to the school.
Right.
But later on, I think probably about 1971 is the first time we had a parking lot.
Well, it's interesting, the walking. So many people that I interview remember so well walking. And Southside is still a walk-in school. And you think of the other high schools where 90% of the students ride the bus.
Yeah.
And I have very strong memories of walking back and forth and meeting
I
people.
lived over on Packard near Broadway. It was about 10 blocks away. And I always walked through Packard Park on the way to South Side.
Sure.
And when I lived on Anthony, I had to walk, I don't know, it was a long, long way from there. But yeah, there's no other way to get here.
Right,
except
absolutely. Well, we are, many people that I speak to, if their children go to other high schools, they always lament the fact that their kids didn't have the opportunity to walk back and forth. And that the friends that you walked with are very strong memories for a lot of people that I interview.
Well, I don't see anything wrong with walking myself,
Yeah.
but I'd hate to walk from where I live now out by Georgetown to here. That's 8 miles away. I don't think I'd want to walk that far.
So when you walked into South Side this morning, what differences do you see?
Well, I don't know. It must have happened in the last few years, but you come in the outside door, you go right into the office, because the inside doors, I think, are locked. And then you go through the office to be able to get into the school. And it wasn't that way when I was here or when I taught
In fact,
here.
for us, Calhoun Street was the main entrance, wasn't it? This north entrance was...
Yes, I think when the school was built, Calhoun Street was the main entrance. Then when they renovated it in '96.
10 more minutes.
Oh, 10 more minutes, okay. So my understanding is that the logo now as we're getting close to the 100th celebration, and one way or another, you have been here for most of the years of Southside, and my understanding is almost everybody wants the Calhoun Street entrance to be the face of Southside.
When I was in the 8th grade, there were 16 teachers, 9 of which were from Fort Wayne High School that had been here 25 years. So they started a quarter-century club. Then the next year, the people that started the second year of the school became members of the quarter-century club. That's what my dad was. Then we've added every year that someone had been here 25 years. Marianne Dietrich, I think, has been here 25 years, and so this is her year to join the quarter-century club. Then at the 50th anniversary in 1972, the athletic director and I started the Athletic Hall of Fame. And we had about 60 people. We used the coaches that we could find, and my dad helped, and we got about 60 more that have been added almost every 5 years after that. Tori Curry is supposed to add about 6 more this year, maybe at a basketball game, I hope. And then at the 75th anniversary, I got the idea that we should recognize our distinguished alumni. So I got together with a committee of older teachers, and we picked about 60. Then we put their pictures outside the auditorium. Then about every 5 years, we've added to that and added to that. And at the centennial, this is part of the logo, I think, of the centennial,
I think so.
we're going to add about 15 more. So those are ongoing projects, 3 of which I've been
Right.
deeply involved with, and the other one, I did attend the 25th quarter century banquet that they had,
Okay.
and I've been to one almost every year.
Yeah.
I think I told you I've been to 40 National Honor Society banquets and lots of plays and lots of course, athletics. When the swimming pool opened, Bill Close was in charge, and he and Sally Riedorf called me into the office and asked me if I would work at the swimming pool. And I thought, yeah, I could do that. I could keep the timing board. And they said, every meet? I said, every meet? There were 40 of them a year.
Yeah.
So I did that. This is after I retired. I did 40 for 10 years at the.
Wow, and those are difficult meets to sit through, I think.
Well, as I also have mentioned many times to many people, my main job was teaching chemistry.
Right.
And I absolutely loved it. I loved the subject, I loved the students, I loved the school. So I devoted many, many hours, not just here at school, but at home, on weekends,
Southside.
working on chemistry.
Sorry to interrupt, but Truzio wants me to ask if you can recite the periodic table by memory.
Is he done?
No. Can you recite the periodic table from memory?
Oh, yeah. You want me to?
Yes, please.
It'll take about 5 minutes.
Go for it.
Hydrogen, helium, lithium, beryllium, boron, nitrogen, carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, fluorine, neon, potassium, magnesium, scandium, titanium, vanadium, chromium, manganese, iron, cobalt, nickel, copper, zinc, gallium, germanium, arsenic, sulfur, chlorine, argon. Want me to keep going? Cesium, calcium, yttrium, niobium. Now I got to think, because I memorized the middle ones up and
You
down.
can stop now.
You can stop now, he said. He's got most of it. You can stop now, he
Oh,
said.
well, I can go all the way to Organoson, which is 118. I can also recite pi to 50 places. Do you want me to do that?
Oh, no.
I try to keep my brain going.
Well, you absolutely. I know you've got, as you've mentioned, you have a lot of former students as Facebook friends, and you're always posing questions.
Well, I played golf with Gary Probst and Bob Wasson, and Dick Robinson was in your class. And I've had associations with, some of them were in our bridge club, Bob and Martha Watson. Martha
Sure.
was in your class
Sure.
too.
You know, what's amazing to me is when I was a student here, there were almost 700 students in my class. Multiply that by 4, so we had nearly 3,000 students in about half the size of the current building.
Right, right.
And we managed to get down the hallway, and it was a fight every step of the way just to get through. Well, I hear the school bell, so I would think our friends probably have to get on to their classes and get to teaching. So thank you, Mr. Southside, for coming in, and
Well, thank you, Nancy.
you're more than welcome. We're just always happy to see you. So thank you. All right.